everyone! So in this video I thought I would chit chat a little bit about reverse culture shock. So you may or may not be aware that I've lived abroad I suppose, for the last 4 years. So I was born and grew up in Finland, and then I moved abroad for university. So for the past 4 years, I've lived in both Scotland and Singapore. And then now this year I have, in the past couple months ago, I moved back to Finland. And I did experience actually a bit of reverse culture shock, even though, you wouldn't, personally, I didn't expect to, since I did live here most of my life. But you do get used to living away quite quickly. People are very adaptable. And just to note, in this beginning, I'm not trying to compare the entirety of Finland and the entirety of the United Kingdom, because that's it's gonna vary based on city to city, place to place. And obviously my experience of living in the UK has solely been in Edinburgh, so I can only base my experience on living in the center of Edinburgh versus now I'm living in a smaller area. I'm not in the center of Helsinki, so I'm comparing living in the middle of a capital to, not living in the middle of the capital. So of course that's gonna play a big part on these differences that I felt. Because obviously living somewhere super central and then moving somewhere that's kind of, off the beaten track a little bit is gonna present its own kind of difficulties and adjustments. And it's not due to just Finland or just the UK, it's just, location as well. But I don't know, I just felt it would be interesting to talk a little bit about my move back and how I have felt about it. So I think the first thing that I noticed when I moved back to Finland was, well, this isn't exactly a culture shock or anything like that, but I think most prominently I remember when I first got back, and because mind you, in the last 12 months or so that I did live abroad, the last year I was away, because usually I'd come home for Christmas and Easter and I'd spend the whole summers here and stuff, but last year was different because I was working, so I only came back for 2 weeks during Christmas and a week or two in Easter, and then very, very short time in July. Yeah, so I was less than 2 months in Finland, which is the shortest time I've ever spent in Finland in my entire life. So when I flew back to Finland in the end of August, when I properly moved here, I remember the first kind of few weeks when I'd go out and about, when I'd hear Finnish, I would literally get whiplash, turning around, trying to find who's this person speaking Finnish. Because when you're living in in another country abroad, for example in Edinburgh, when you hear Finnish, you're it's rare, so you're thinking it's either a tourist, so oh my gosh, where's that other Finnish person? You don't come across other people speaking Finnish very often at all, so it's a very rare occurrence. So your first instinct is to try and locate the other Finnish person, oh my gosh, where are they? Who is it? Are they really speaking Finnish? Did I hear correct? But then in Finland, obviously, pretty much everyone's speaking Finnish, so then my instinct in the beginning when I first came back was every time I heard Finnish, I was what? Who? And then I was oh wait, I am in Finland. So then I was oh yeah. That feeling has now passed, but that was one of the things I remember right in the beginning feeling kind of funny, because hearing Finnish and even speaking Finnish felt weird because I'd barely spoken any Finnish in the past 4 years. So yeah. I think another point I realized quite quickly was just the general amount of chit chat is a lot less in Finland. So I'm not saying Scotland in general is a particularly chatty place either, but definitely just the day-to-day chit chat you have with, I don't know, storekeepers or, the security guys outside Tesco, or, I don't know, the librarian, just staff at various locations, even the occasional person on the street, they'll sometimes, chit chat with you, a comment here and there. It's not people are out there having, these great, huge, life-changing conversations, but just here and there, people would say hi or make a little comment or oh, I don't know, just small things here and there. Whereas here, I just feel yeah, when you're at the cashier and stuff, people usually say hi, but there are a lot of times when you go and people will not say a single word to you. Yesterday when I was at the cashier, Our entire exchange was silent. Not one word was exchanged. And then when you start thinking about it, I don't feel particularly weird about it here, but then when you like take it as a whole and you start thinking about it, there's definitely a lot less chit chat here. Definitely. Like just day to day chit chatting. And if you live by yourself like me, and then you happen to not have a school day, and even if you go out and about, you might not even speak a single word out loud in an entire day. So yeah, I think that's a little bit different as well. And then another thing I noticed was, I'm living in student accommodation right now, or in student dorms, I suppose you could call it. I lived in student dorms last year as well, and during my first year of university, and in Singapore. Yeah, I've lived in student dorms a lot, but definitely in the UK versus here, Finland is so quiet. Like, I am surrounded by apartment buildings filled with only students living in here, and it's dead silent. At night, during weekends, no one makes a sound. It's completely quiet. I walk down that corridor and I could be the only person living here. It's weird. But the biggest thing I think I realized was in the UK when I was living there are so many lads that, are going on their night out. They'll like loiter around outside, your window or the entry of the student accommodation or whatever, and they're just, drinking or like having some prees and, gathering up their friends before they go for a night out. Here, there isn't any of that. There's no loitering outside. There's nobody, I don't know where people loiter, but like it's not outside my window. And I got so used to it in student accommodation that there'd be lads everywhere, and every weekend there'd be like shouting outside my window, like, "Rah!" Just lads having fun, I guess. But there's none of that here. It's so quiet, and it is a blessing. I like peace and quiet, but it was a little eerie when I was first here because I just felt all alone. Like, at least if there's lads shouting outside, you don't feel so alone in this world. But when it's dead quiet, you're like, wow, am I the only one living here? But yeah, that was another thing I noticed when I moved back here. Also, one thing I almost immediately noticed is that the air quality here is so much cleaner. I think Finland probably has one of the better air qualities. It feels so fresh. And because it is a bit more crisp, the air, or it doesn't get as hot, it just feels more crisp, and the crispiness, I guess, feels cleaner as well. And just the streets and everything are so clean. Because every time I go back to Edinburgh, it's, you feel like you're inhaling car exhaust fumes, and there's so many people just smoking everywhere all throughout the street. So you're like inhaling secondhand smoke and inhaling car exhaust fumes, and then there's like litter scattered everywhere. There's like garbage all over the floor or the ground, and yeah, so it definitely feels the spaces are much more open, and everything just seems much cleaner, which is nice. But on the other side, everything feeling much more open and more spacious, less people, there's no like shoving around everywhere. On the flip side, it is harder to get around. So in Edinburgh, I never felt like I really had a problem getting around. I was able to walk everywhere. Everything was within a decent walking distance. And yeah, I barely ever had to take public transportation. I never felt the need for a bike or a car. I felt like I could get everywhere pretty easily. I took the occasional bus, but all in all, I felt like I was able to get places very easily and conveniently. Whereas here, things are more spread out and things aren't always built so well for walking and things. So yeah, I've taken to use the bike. I probably biked in the past few months more than I have in my entire life combined up until this point. So yeah, I've taken up biking, and I've definitely felt the need for a car. I don't currently have a car, but there has been many a moments when I've been silently wishing that I had a car, because it would just be so much easier to get to the store, get to where I need to be. And yeah, walking isn't always, because I don't, again, this is another point where in Edinburgh I lived like center. If you know Edinburgh at all, like a lot of the time, a lot of the time I lived like around the Southbridge area, so it was like very central and like very close to pretty much everything. So I was like, you just walk outside and everything's right in front of you, whereas here I'm kind of like more, I'm not in the center of anything really, I'm kind of more away from places, so it does feel like when I walk outside and there's like nothing, you're like, I don't know, it's a different feeling again. And I guess the only comparable thing would be if I lived like maybe in Helsinki Center. And then I think another point, when I first came to university here, I was used to, you know, places being open a lot longer. Not that things are open super long in Edinburgh either. I mean, like cafes usually closed about 6 p.m. in Edinburgh. They close roughly around the same time here as well. I mean, the local shops here close earlier, like 10, maybe 11. In Edinburgh, it was usually midnight, some even 1 a.m. So, but I think the major thing that like just freaked me out was the library opening, like the university library opening times. In Edinburgh, they changed it a couple years back, I think, that the library was open 24/7. Like it was already open till like, I don't know, 1, 2 a.m. But they changed it while I was there to being open 24/7. And I was like, wow, this is great. I can go as early as I want. I can stay up as late as I want. I only once pulled an all-nighter, and it wasn't even my idea. This was, you know, my friend that kind of bullied me into it. But I was also working on a tight deadline that I had to hand in a paper the next day, and I will never be repeating that experience again. But the point was, if I wanted to pull an all-nighter at the library, the possibility was there, and a lot of people actually spent a lot of time in the library. And I would, you know, I would stay there till like midnight. I would stay there till 1 a.m. sometimes too. Cause you know, the library there, so many people would go. So then the most convenient, in my opinion, the most convenient time was to, you know, go after dinner. So I'd get there, you know, maybe 7, maybe 8. So then the spaces would be cleared out. Everyone would be gone. Because even if you go in the morning, people will get there like at 7 a.m. to like reserve a spot and like study super early in the morning. But after dinner time, you know, spaces would clear out and I would get like a good some hours studying. If I get there like 7, 8, stay there till like midnight. That was like my study time that I used. And then in the daytime I could, you know, do other things outside in the sun. Yeah. But anyways, I digress. My point was that the library there was open 24/7, so, you know, I could always schedule my day to go to the library whenever I needed to, whenever it was most convenient to me. But here, even on weekdays, the library closes already at 6 p.m. and I was shook. I was shook to the core. I was like, what? 6 p.m. For me, just for me personally, it felt, I just could not comprehend. I was like, it's a weekday and it closes at 6. Like, where do people study? What are people doing? Do people not study at this university? Like, where is everyone? Like, where do people go to study? I didn't get it. I was like, what? Like, what if I need to print something and it's like the evening? Like, where do I go? What do I do? Like, what if it can't wait till the morning? I could not understand. I mean, of course, like, I get it. People don't want to be working at that time of the night, and also, you know, it's probably not the healthiest habit to be pulling all-nighters at the library either. But I don't know, I just had like that sense of like, it was always there if I needed it. So that was something that when I came here, it took me a long time to like accept. Sorry, I'm losing my words. I'm so distraught about this right now. It just took me a while to accept the fact that the library wasn't always open when I maybe needed to go. I still don't understand where people go and study. Please leave in the comments, where do you do your studying if you're at university? Oh yeah, and then also, you know, just Finland has a reputation of being kind of expensive, like in the groceries department as well. So of course, the UK was the first country where I lived in as like an adult. You know, when I moved out from home, the UK was the first country I lived in and, you know, bought my own groceries, you know, did the shopping by myself, all of that kind of thing. So in my mind, the baseline price of groceries is based on my experience shopping in Tesco's and Sainsbury's and Lidl in the UK, these sorts of places. So then when I came here and I had to go do my shopping in like Prisma, K-Market, even Lidl here, the prices are a lot more expensive, and I could get so much stuff for like £1 or less from Tesco's. I would, go to the store, I could fill up my basket, and it would be under £20. Usually, I never spent over £20 in a single shop that I can remember. And it's not like I was being cheap either. Like, I would just buy a week's worth of groceries. It was always, I don't know, 10, 15 pounds max. And here, I feel like I have like this much groceries, and it's like 20 euros. And I'm like, what? And like, of course, there's the exchange rate and stuff, but these days even it's not, especially after the whole Brexit disaster, the exchange rate kind of plummeted, so it's a lot more even than it was when I first moved there. So yeah, it's just grocery prices here kind of shocked me in the beginning. I mean, it's not that outrageous, but when you compare how many things you can get for £1 in the UK versus how many things you can buy for €1 here, even at little. Okay, and then yeah, I mean, even if you want to get a cup of coffee and go to the cafe, I mean, a lot of the cafes here, my goodness, you can go and they're like $3.80 for a coffee. I'm like, what? $3.80? I never spent more than £3 was outrageous already for a coffee. But like, there's places that will give you like a regular latte for €4. I'm like, €4. Oh, I just think it's so expensive. And I could get it for like $2.60 was the average price for like a almond or soy milk latte in Edinburgh. So like €4. I'm like, what? Oh, just like little things like that sometimes just shocks me a little bit, even though I've lived here most of my life. Okay, I think the last point I'll touch upon is, I think, one of the more prominent things that you experience, and you don't notice it as much until like you go to Edinburgh and then come back, but Edinburgh has a real problem with homelessness. And like, I don't know, it's like when you move there and you first notice it, it's really quite shocking. Like, there is a lot of homeless people, and they'll sit on the street, they'll sleep in the streets, and it's honestly really heartbreaking to see, and just like having to live with that. And obviously it's not like me, I don't want to be insensitive or anything, but, and like, it's not like I'm not the one going through that, but it is hard to see. And then when you live in the same like neighborhood for 4 years, and you start recognizing the people obviously there, and you see that it's the same people that have been there when you first moved there, and then 4 years later when you're graduating, it's still the same people. Like, you recognize their faces and stuff, and it's just very, I don't know, it's hard to see, because obviously you can't help everyone, and there's not like that much you can really do about the situation. And like, even now, like, the UK's been in the news a lot semi-recently, just about how the homelessness situation has gotten a lot worse, and it's not improving, like, it's actually getting worse there. And I think even in Edinburgh, it's very, like, it's a problem, because you'll walk down that main street and there's like tons of people just sitting there on the street, for years on end. And then you'll see them, like where my sister lives, there's like little alcoves and people will be sleeping there, like that's where they live. And yeah, I don't know, it's just like having to walk past all those people every single day, where they're like looking at you, asking you for money, and just seeing that plainly right in front of you, like it makes you feel really, really bad, especially when you like constantly have to just like walk by them, and you can't help. And then you feel like a bad person when you're just like walking past all these people that are like asking you for help, and like I can't provide them a home, or like I can't like change their life, I guess. So then you just like, it like wears on you, and it makes you feel really bad. It makes you feel like a bad person. But I don't know. It was just really hard. Like that was like one of the things that was like a little bit hard, kind of. I don't know. But then in Finland, at least I haven't, as of yet, I haven't noticed anyone. I think maybe in Helsinki center there might be some, but at least I've gone there a couple times to like take buses and stuff, but at least so far, okay, oh, I'm getting a little emotional here. Yeah, but at least so far, I haven't really noticed that much like blatant homelessness. Like maybe it's more hidden in Finland, or I don't know, it's not like so in your face here, so you can kind of go about your life and not like really think about it or realize it. But in Edinburgh, it's like really in your face, the poverty that some people experience, and like how a lot of people are homeless and they're on the streets, and it's like very, very, you know, it's there on display and you can't really ignore it. So I think that was like every time I go back, that's something that kind of hits you in the face and you're like, wow, like, oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. Well, if you are still watching this, please do leave in the comments if any of you have happened to move to Finland. What have been your culture shocks? Or maybe if you lived abroad and came back to Finland, what were your reverse culture shocks? I would love to know and read them. So let me know in the comments. And yeah, I guess that just about concludes this video. So till next time.